Guys, welcome back to Isha Podcast. It's a new month and I was gone for a week. And I was gone for a week because it's close to New Year and there was really nothing much to talk about. But I am back now and I came back with a guest. As you can see, his name is Tobenna. Hi Tobenna, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm doing great.
Have you Have you
Today, weekend,
been?
long weekend, trying to, gather energy for next week. Next week feels very, very, very busy. So like
Okay. Yeah. So, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell them what you do. Who is Tabena?
name is Ezimorah Tobenna, front-end web developer, about 4 5 years of experience. Is what I enjoy doing. I actually really enjoy work. I
Hmm.
enjoy coding. I enjoy creating things here and there, which is why I love coding. I play games a lot. I watch movies. Simply just sleeping a lot. So yeah, that's all about me.
Everybody should sleep, especially if you're coding. I heard that coders like they only work at night and then in day they sleep. Is that true?
Actually, when I started out, yes, very true. I was more active at night. I would spend the whole night doing my productivity at night was like double. But recently, instead eating into my nights, eating into my day, and instead turning on me,
Yes.
instead prioritizing sleep. I knew that the night time was for sleep and work time was for work. So yeah, there are a lot of people that still work at night.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that work at night, but personally, I just prefer my night time for sleep.
Yeah, I think it also depends on like if you have the motivation to start working at night. But yeah, so we're going to play a game. I have two riddles and one question. So my first riddle that you're going to solve is work tirelessly without rest, yet when you stop using me, I seem to freeze. I can calculate, process, and solve problems, but only with your command. What am I?
Like living code,
No.
computer.
Yeah, it's a computer. Okay, cool. The second riddle is I come in different shapes and sizes, and I can hold knowledge and can't speak. You can find me in libraries, but I never leave. What am I?
Book.
Yeah, well done. Well done. Clap for yourself. Well done. Okay, so my third question is if you had a quote, what would your quote say? But don't answer it now. I'll ask you towards the end. So a bit of more time for you to think about it and gather your thoughts together. So obviously you're a front end developer. I want to know how you started off as a front end developer.
Personally for me, I growing up, I liked creating things. I like building things from bottom to top. So when I started out after secondary school, then I was really looking for what to do. My star had this friend, David, over to his place sometimes, and
Mhm.
he was a full time tech person. He was
Yeah.
really into tech. The first time I spoke to him about it, he just laughed. I was like, they're going to be ready and all that. But and when we talk about it now, he used to tell me that he didn't see the motivation
Hmm.
immediately. So there was a particular day we went to church. He happened to have come to the same church as we went to that time. So church and after church, we are having a conversation around like what we can do relating to tech. The options was like, okay, you can go into UI, UX, because he's a UI UX designer, very big one at that. I can also go into front end, I can go into back end, I can go into DevOps. He broke down all the different career paths for me and what was expected. I told him I just really wanted to create things, right? So it was like, oh, I can try UI UX. I said I would also like to code. Now said, okay, since I want to create things, work on, and I should look at front end web development. So that was basically how it all started. He told me to go home, get a course to kick off, and like I was like, okay, then I didn't really know anything about tech. Then my mind wasn't even in tech. I actually wanted to be a petrochemical engineer when I was younger. So my eye was not even in like technology and software. So we had a conversation around it, and he was like, I should get the course. So I got the course. Sorry, he picked a course for me rather, because I didn't know what was good and what was a good course, what was a bad course. He picked a course and go for me and sent it over to me, and I just started getting familiar with it, and that's how I started. That's how my tech journey started.
So I'm going to get to how you wanted to be a petroleum engineer later, but obviously you knew nothing about tech and someone introduced tech to you. So if you were to introduce tech to a complete new beginner or like someone that was previously in the same position as you before getting introduced to tech, what would you say to them? Like what type of advice would you give them?
Personally, I'll think towards zeal, loving what you do. I don't think there's anything like loving what you do. I believe that, like every other career, tech is not different. So if you are ever going to venture into something, sure that it is something you love. Because if it's not something you love, just like every other career, there will be days, there will be bad days, there will be very troubling days, days where you have questions. And the only thing that you have to hold on to at those different times are like what you love, what brought you to what you're doing correctly. Um, Salary will matter. The salary will be very discouraging because when you look at the work and how overwhelmed you are, you like what actually keeps you there is your love for it and where you want to be. So two things basically: zeal, zeal to do what you do, and love for what you do. Those are the two things I advise anyone getting into any career path,
Yeah.
especially tech.
I will agree with you as well. I think most people, not even most people, I think, yeah, people that are new to tech or don't know what tech is, they're used to the usual like norm or like the usual information that is being provided to them. Like this is tech and this is how you can go from 0 to like 100. Even like yes, you can go from 0 to 100, but there's so many like stories, so many like problems, so many challenges that will come in each stage that you're in. And I think most people just don't understand that as much as going into tech is new, it's also, for me personally, I always tell people that if you're going into tech, just consider it as a normal job. Consider it like you're going into university. Consider it like you're going into school, because it's going to be the same things, but in different terminologies, with different people, in different surroundings, in different environments. But let's not go into that at the moment because tech is just teching, to be honest with you. So you wanted to be a petroleum engineer. Like, how did you get? Like, what were you thinking to think like my career is going to be petroleum engineer? Yeah.
Okay, so me, I think from when I was young, I knew that I was going to be an engineer. I didn't have a particular, I wasn't clear on what particular engineer I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
When I was small, I used to touch things a lot. So if I get into your car, I want to touch the AC, I want to do this, I want to touch one or two things, you know. But I already knew, I loved seeing the fact that things work. I liked seeing, machines and all that. So I knew, okay, I wanted to get into engineering, right? But then when I was young, my parents, me, you know, suggested I be a petrochemical engineer because I wasn't clear and I was young. On I was young to make that decision for myself. I didn't know so much about engineering. I'm
Yeah.
talking about primary school. So I said, okay, petrochemical engineering and all that. So I started getting myself familiar with petrochemical engineering. And when I actually wanted to get to the university, to apply for petrochemical engineering, was it?
Do you think like if there was enough resources for you to actually further your career into petroleum engineering, you would have actually gone down that route, or would you have transited at some point?
One thing I'm very grateful for currently, I'm very grateful that I actually didn't go into petrochemical engineering because it's sort of the money bag of the world currently, but it's still the money bag of the world. I mean, oil is still where the money is. I'm looking at my passion and values. I'm just looking based on money. But I think really I would have still transitioned into something tech related or data related because that's where the world is moving to right now. That's where the opportunity to learn, that's where there's the opportunity to improve and develop on yourself. There are different fields coming out. How tech is concerned. I think it's I'd have still transitioned. If I was still in university as a petrochemical engineer, I've
Mhm.
not gotten myself familiar with technologies. I'll still be on this path, very large extent. Yeah.
All right. So from let's say your friend got you your first course on was where did you like where did he get you your first course from?
Put that course on Udemy. It was on
Okay,
Udemy.
so you went from Udemy to did you take like any internships to like further the theoretical of what you've learned as a front end developer into practicality? Yeah.
Yes, I did. He advised me to get into internships so that I have work experience because experience is different from work experience. What you learn different from the organizational implementation of it. So
Mm-hmm.
as I go into internships, I go into two actually. I got into side hustle internship, got into Zuri. Zuri had one internship then. I got their different certificates.
Okay. So from internships, were you in school at this time? Like how were you juggling were you in school? I wanna know like if you were in school.
I was in school. I think that was difficult, the most difficult part of my life, having to get
Mm-hmm.
into school. And I was in school, and in fact, I was just getting into school. There was always what kept me going then was people telling me, "Oh, I'm still very young. I'm very lucky to have started now." All that, and all the talk, and so those were things that actually kept me going. But yes, I was still in school.
Okay.
It was a very
So
difficult experience.
you were in school and you were also doing interning for front end development. How were you able to find balance in those two? Like, how did you combine it together?
So internships were were remote, remote basically. I They usually start with trainings. Then there's a training where you actually learn. So there was opportunity for me to relearn,
Mm-hmm.
learn, right? And there was now the boot camp where you work with organizations. So why it was easy for me was because in that internship, most of us were still in school. Just a very few people had graduated. So that was how it was. It wasn't really hard navigating through all these things because most of us were students. It was very stressful having to come back from classes, come home, you're not resting, you're actually opening your laptop to start doing an assignment or getting a task done and all that. Not really a pleasant experience, but I know that it was the zeal, the vision that kept me going all those times. Yeah.
And during these times, like, have you had like any major challenges that like change your decision? Um, yeah, have you had any major challenges?
During one of my internships, very close to before I got my first full time job. I worked with one of my bosses, who is Deba. Shout out to Deba. Is one person that taught me most of what I know. He taught me most of what I do currently. But we usually have these things where Deba is a very he's someone that works at night. We usually have our meetings by 1 a.m. to like 5 a.m. We are up at night and we are planning
1 a.m.
things to do there.
1 a.m. Are you serious?
It's like everybody's sleeping and then we are walking to the point where we don't even know and then we start hearing like chickens crowing and all that. And before you know, I'm looking at my time, oh, it's already 6 o'clock, it's already 6:30, right? So, but kept me going there, and what really encouraged me there was I saw what Deba used to, write, the code he used to write. Deba wrote a lot of code. And you know when you feel you've learned, for instance, React. I felt then I knew React, or I had not learned it, but I knew it. But then Deba is writing next level React, and I was like,
Mhm.
my God, like is this like what you learned versus what you're seeing? Very two
Yeah.
different things. And that was one particular factor for me that really pushed me to learn a very key person to the person I've become today is a key factor to who I am today. Encouraged me. So seeing all those things they did by 1 a.m. to 5 p.m., my mouth is like this because like I'm literally watching his code and all that, and I'm like, my God, I wish I could do something like this. So zeal to get there, to get better at what it was I was doing, to get to that point and even surpass Deba was part of what encouraged me to get better.
Like, okay, I have an honest question, and I'm not trying to dig any like developers that are listening to this, but why do you guys constantly like work to like 1 a.m., p.m., 3 a.m., a.m.? And I know like we have developers in our team, and it got to a point like last year where they will just be awake and you'll be hearing the Slack noise. Like, I don't know what the Slack noise is, but if you know, you know. So why are you guys, why nights or why 1 a.m.? Why not like,
So coding works, or
mhm.
the way writing code works is, for personally for me, I believe writing code works such that you're trying to keep your, you're not trying to lose that chain of thought. What that implies is you're trying to make sure that you are distracted at any point in time. So when you're writing code, it's like it's like um it's like trying to untie a knot, to loosen a knot. So when you leave the knot and come back, basically you almost have to start from scratch because you don't know where you left off. So that's how code works. So why people work at night is because at night most people are sleeping. The product manager that is on your neck is most likely asleep. Um, the designer that will shout at you that the UI implementation is not in tandem with the was designed is asleep. So then you actually have that peace of mind to focus on what you're doing. Because when you start getting into meetings or you start answering questions from your boss and all that, it just basically loses that chain of thought. And when you have to get up, it's not as if you can't do it, but you almost have to start from scratch.
Mm.
That's why the night time is the best time to actually get stuff done. Yes.
So it's like it's giving silence. No one is disturbing you. Basically, that's the definition. Okay. So I want to go back for people like me, yeah, that thinks code is A plus A. Like you just basically have to type in A plus A and like it works. Could you explain more like what is the concept of code and how do you bring the code into life? Like how does it go into reality or you know how God said let it be light and there was light. So when you press your code, how does it like come out?
So it's from language to language. There are different engines that run different types of code, different compilers and assemblers and all that. How it basically works across programming languages is um, is data. Single thing is data. Your code, what coding is you're instructing the computer. So you are basically giving data, manipulating that data based on requests, right? For instance, in front end, what you're basically doing is working with React, or you're working, let's say you're working with bare JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. What you're doing throughout the entire experience is manipulating data. Say, for instance, want to the logging in algorithm, for instance, is basically me putting in my details into a database, which is data, into a database, and the front end is grabbing from that database. Back end is sending data from database to the front end, sending what the front end needs at that particular point. So that's manipulating. So I put in Ezimorah Tobenna. Code comes in is the UI. I'm talking based on front end. The UI might expect Tobenna Ezimorah, not Ezimorah Tobenna. So front end has to actually manipulate to make sure it comes out the way
Mm.
it is. It's mostly arithmetic and logical. It's a lot. It deals a lot with arithmetic operations. Understand mathematics, it won't be a problem. If you also understand algorithmic thinking, you know how to do things step by step. You know that to reach, get this podcast or to do something, you have to pass through a series of steps to get that thing done. I think you are as well a very good programmer. So that's basically what coding is all about. Just the reason is Peter doesn't understand English, doesn't understand the languages we speak. So what coding is basically writing, telling the computer what to do, way that the computer understands. So that's just basically what coding is.
That's just it. And I don't know if I should be advising people not to be a front end developer, but it's not a language. It doesn't understand English. It doesn't understand Spanish. It doesn't understand any. So it only understands its own language, basically. And its own language can be React, JavaScript. That's backend, right?
Not necessarily. The computer understands machine language. That's what the computer
Hmm.
understands. JavaScript is a JavaScript is a precompiled version of machine. So there's an engine in your for us now. There's Node.js. There's Node. Node is an engine in my local in my computer, compiles that JavaScript to machine language the way that the computer can understand. So even the code I'm writing, that doesn't understand that code. It's just a more understandable version. It's a
Yeah.
better way to actually write a language. So if you understand Spanish, for instance, and I'm speaking, okay, if I'm in Spain, if I'm in Spain and you're Spanish, personally, I'm Turkish, so I have to speak Turkish to somebody that understands Turkish to interpret Turkish to Spanish to you. That's the
Mhm.
only way I can communicate to you. So Node is that person that interprets, that hears and interprets from both sides. That's just, it's all just data manipulation.
Wow, developers know them stuff. They know them stuff, but yeah, if you're looking to become a developer, honestly, you just go ahead with it and learn as you go, I guess. That's it. So speaking about teams, UI, product manager, what's been like your best experience with, let's start with a product manager. What has been your best experience with product managers?
If for most tech people, the product manager is the person you very much dislike because
Mm-hmm.
there's always a person on your neck. Pleasant experiences with product managers. I think for me is product manager I've worked with at school, getting into a job, or when I used to get into jobs in school. Just try to make sure that the company knew that I was a student. That period, it's a lot. So when you work with a product manager that really understands you're in school, just makes the entire thing seamless. So there's always the times where you have to go like, oh, I can't get this done during the day, during working hours. But I'll try to get it done by tomorrow morning. You wake up to it by tomorrow morning. A manager that understands that and is willing to have that with a very little amount of tolerance is the perfect pro manager. And yes, I've really experienced it, even my current job.
Okay. Do you think product management has had a positive or a negative impact into your journey as a front-end developer, or even building codes or deploying codes? Like, how has that experience been?
So me, I'll say product management has really helped is because product management somewhere that didn't have a product manager, that product almost collapsed in front of our eyes
Hmm.
because there was no plan, there was no clear vision as to where we're going to. We just knew that we're working on design and integrating the backend. Someone could come up with a feature. Oh, we need this, we need that, and have to stop what we are doing, jump on whatever it is, and it was basically scattered. Working with product managers really has made that experience very defined. Where you are working on, you know the time frame, you know where you should be at this point in time, you know when you are lagging behind, you know when you are too ahead, right? That's why there's a product manager to manage that product or project. But I think yes, that's really impacted me. It has helped me so much with time. I'm resting aware of like the amount of time I need to rest so that I can meet up with today's target or tomorrow's target.
Yeah.
It has really helped my that shaped my working.
How, like, okay. Having knowing that before going into front-end development, do you know like you will be working with different set of teams and different type of people?
To side hustle internship, what they
Hmm.
did was they trained us, they put us into teams. So we had different teams. Each team had a product manager, each team had a front end dev, back end dev, had a DevOps person. The people you're working with are fellow students like you from different
Different courses, yeah.
so you have to already originally I didn't know when I was working. Yes, they said it here and here. Knew clearly that UI I'm trying to implement, somebody's going to build that UI, but I didn't know the extent to which that will go.
Hmm.
Working on the internship actually exposed me to the fact that I'm going to work on the team with somebody managing the products, back end dev, a front end dev, a UI person, a DevOps person, cloud engineer, all those things. So yes, that was what that particular internship did for me.
Okay, so obviously we've understood like a bit of more insight on front end working with product managers, and I think the other people that you guys, the other team that you guys also work with are UI UX product designers, right? How has that been for you? What level of impact has that created for you moving forward with being a developer?
Personally, for me, that it's giving me the mindset, setting mindset. You cannot do something on your own. You can't be product on your own. There are people that do that, but you see that the product hasn't or didn't necessarily reach its potential, what it was meant to reach. It has made me believe in teamwork. Working with a team, everybody on that team understands clearly where we need to be a particular set time. It just aids the whole thing. Your front end implementation is easy, your back end implementation is easy because you're working on the team and you're aware of where you are meant to be. I think working with the team has really changed my mindset. If I want to get something done, aside even tech, actually looking out to see if there's the opportunity to bring in somebody else that can assist and make the results richer than even expected.
Hmm.
That's
Have
just
you
it.
ever been in a situation where you've been put in a situation with either a product designer or a product manager or maybe a backend developer, etc.? Have you ever put like been put in that position, conflict of interest, or like I'm suggesting let's do this, I'm suggesting let's do that? Have you ever been in that position?
This is something I try to do. Everything, the product manager is in charge of the product. The product manager can also be called the product owner. So the product manager say is law, how that product is concerned. So the designer is saying, yeah, there I've been in situations where the designer is saying this,
Mm-hmm.
the backend dev is suggesting this. But where there's that disconnect, that's where the product manager comes in to say, oh, let's review the user story, let's review the product story, let's go back, let's take a step back and understand what needs to be done to this, you know. I think those situations, and I've always had to go for the word of the product manager because
Yeah.
I believe he or she understands the product end to end. So I follow what the product manager says. Case where the product manager is not really sure, the next other person to understand or the next other person to obey, times of that is going to be the UI UX engineer, UI UX designer. That's because I believe they understand the user story, implemented based on a certain user story.
Mm-hmm.
Like we say, like front end people say, very common. We say design is law, so we can't go outside the design, do something else. So product manager, the UI designer before any other person. So yeah, at a time when working on a project that didn't have a product manager, I think that was one of the biggest issues or one of the major issues we had. We didn't have a manager to manage the product. So a lot. I mean, there were a lot of let's do this. I think we should do this. I think we do this. And then when you bring everything together, everything is conflicting.
Yeah.
So that product, like, you know, was my worst experience working on that product. To be honest.
Okay. Speaking about worst experience, have you not have you, but if you were to, how many I want to know actually before I ask my next question, I do want to know like how many projects have you worked on so far?
In terms of product, I don't have the figures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, worked on just count based on how many on my GitHub. I have about 50 personal repositories that I've come up with. Also, that is aside private repositories for companies I've worked in and private repositories for little contract jobs I've taken. So I would say this I've worked on, let me say, 60 projects. I've worked on about 60 different projects. Just this is a worst case value. 60 different projects. I've generated code for about 60 projects
Mm-hmm.
or even more. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking about project, right? Obviously, how is it working in a startup? How is that? How I know you're working in a startup at the moment. But do you want to tell us like your experience so far working in a startup, or have you worked in a previous startup before?
So working in a startup, I have to actually say is different from working in a startup. I'll say that is because working in a startup requires all my days.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Nigeria, where the lights can just go off and NEPA can start up.
So so startup jobs are very different from normal jobs. I believe so is because um, so startup requires like a lot of your energy, a lot of your resources. So it's different because you're building the product from scratch. One of the things very key in working in a startup is vision, like also the love for the product. If you don't love
Mhm.
that product, I don't think you will actually start up. You might just stay 6 months and when you start wanting to leave. But I think actually wanting to see that the product comes to life is a
Mhm.
very key factor that comes in when you're working in a startup. So it's very different. It's very different. If you're working somewhere, you're just basically maintaining code, working on a new project that doesn't require so much pressure. But if you are actually working at a startup, there's going to be pressure, there's going to be times,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be times where to not be professional
Yeah.
because but you have to make a lot of sacrifices as well. But I think love for the product is most of it basically.
When you say like unprofessional, that mean like obviously there's always like a work culture for every organization, whether it's startup, whether it's like a big tech company. But like in terms of every startup have their own like different work culture. So a work culture, for those who don't know what a work culture is, for instance, an organization can tell you to wear suit and tie every day, but in a startup you can wear shorts and t-shirt and face cap to work basically. So in terms of professional, how do you accommodate professionalism in a startup? Because startup is not fully strict the way organizations are strict or lenient. How do you manage your professionalism skills?
So usually advise people to intern for organizations or standard organizations before they go full time into startup. Because I believe that full time organization is going to teach you the professionalism you need to know
Mm-hmm.
get stuff done. In startups, yes, most of all these things are not compulsory. Stand up time. If you're working remote, I mean, you don't even just turn on your camera and even stand up and all that. But guidance you have gotten from working in professional places probably puts you in a better position in a startup. It helps you to know how to address people, how to manage stress, how to people, how to listen to people, how to not get emotional because of something you have said, how to just keep it strictly by business.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's what has helped me basically. Intern for full company basically has helped me like navigating through startup.
Yeah. If you were to give like an advice for a beginner like me that wants to learn development, what would your number one advice be?
Life, people say, for instance, say a Ronaldo chilling because making money off for the life. So I always advise people to when you find yourself in a career path that you never found yourself ever, please suggest that you have in mind that you have it have the slightest idea, slightest imagination of you making it in that particular industry. Always advise you to do some level of affection.
Yeah.
I think always what is going to drive you. It's not professional. Some people want to always keep it strictly business. I work for you, you pay me. But thing has to keep you going when the road gets rough, right? And the road will always get rough. So I think, yeah, zeal, love what it is you do.
Yeah.
I know for sure that's what is going to guide you at the end of the day.
You're always mentioning you're always mentioning zero. I want to know like what is zero and what does zero mean to you to Tobenna?
For me, zero is is the the eagerness to get something done. Zeal is, drive, that drive. It's when you love something, you is naturally going to come for it. You wake
Mm.
up in the morning, you're pumped, you're like open your laptop because you love what you do. You play football, they call you for training, you run to the training ground to go and train because you love what you do.
Yeah.
I think that's the zeal is the drive to something basically.
Okay. If you had a quote, what would your quote say?
My quotes. Okay. I think I had a quote.
Mm-hmm.
quote is something I learned sometime last month. Been the theme of my life, basically. I'm someone that's always wanted to be successful. So my quote is, success, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness actually is the key to success. So if you love what you are doing, you will be successful. Love what you are doing, you will be successful. I think that's just it. If you love what you're doing, you put energy into it, you have the zeal, wake up in the morning every day to get it done. Like, there's no chance, there's no way you will not be successful. You will be successful.
I talk about the things you and your friends don't want to talk about. What is tech? Let's talk. Your classmates will judge you. I know and I hear you. Your boss will fire you. Give me the full gist. Your work, your school, your career. Isha podcast, not for the weak. Let's get it.